Now, one of the challenges with the Trump tariffs has been, could this be India's 1991 moment, where India turns a potential crisis, or at least a challenge, into an opportunity? Now, someone who knows a thing or two about 1991 was Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, the former deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, a key member of the Manmohan Singh Narasimha Rao team that unleashed those reforms. With the tariff war raging, can India use this crisis as an opportunity? Is the question I posed to Dr. Ahluwalia at the Business Today Summit. Listen in. Dr. Ahluwalia, let me start with what a number of political and economic commentators are calling 2025 and the tariff war with the United States as a potential crisis that could also create opportunities, much like 1991. Is there any parallel at all between what happened in 1991, when a balance of payments and a foreign exchange crisis forced us into reform, and what we are now facing in 2025 with economic uncertainty and these tariff battles?
Well, thanks, Rajdeep. I feel a bit like a Christian being thrown before the lions, having you on the other side. Look, every crisis creates an opportunity. I mean, simply because you face a difficult situation, you dust up whatever you think you needed to do, and it increases the urgency of doing it. This is not the same thing as saying it's a good thing that President Trump has done what he has done, because quite honestly, all these things were necessary for us if we wanted to achieve the objective of Viksit Bharat. Because we've been growing for the last 20, 30 years, 23 years at least, at about 6.5%, give or take a little bit. And the objective that we had set requires us to grow on an average up to 2047, somewhere around 8.5%. And in order to do that over this long period, you must allow for some slowing down in the process. So the reference rate, maybe for the next 5 or 10 years, should be closer to 9%. So in that sense, being at 6.5 and having to get to 9%, even if you didn't have the Trump tariffs, was a challenge, okay? What this has done, of course, is it's got rid of the comfort that we're moving along at 6.5, and we need to do something. It's different, in my view, from 1991, because although in a deep sense, 1991 was a very immediate crisis because we just ran out of foreign exchange reserves, because we hadn't taken corrective steps for the previous year and a half. So we just couldn't have carried on doing what we were doing. Nobody was willing to lend to us. We're not in that situation now. I mean, the reserves are there, and if we don't do anything, growth rate will come down. It won't be exactly the same as running out of money, how to pay your import bill tomorrow. But it is important, in an important sense, it is a crisis because the 6.5 wasn't good enough. It wasn't generating the employment we need. And if we don't generate that employment, the internal tensions will increase. That's point number one. Point number two is that the world has become totally different from 1991. See, 1991, that was a high point of successful globalization. We were the odd guys out. I mean, I wrote a piece at that time internally for the government, and I said, look, everybody else is doing this. We're the only ones that are not. It was easy to prove that we are doing the wrong thing because we weren't doing well. Today, the problem is that it's not clear how the world is going to move. It's not a world in which everybody is talking the same language. So the problem becomes more complex. How do you decide what is the right thing to do? And then there are two other complications which you need to keep in mind. One, technology. I mean, technology is changing much more rapidly. Technology has always changed. But earlier, the change in technology took maybe a decade or so to take effect. Today, I mean, ChatGPT in about another year will be increasing its capacity by a magnitude of 2. So the rate of change of this technology is huge. And how are we going to react? What will it do for us? And the last one is climate change. We're not operating in a world in which the climate is going to be the same thing. That introduces new urgency. So quite frankly, it's not just Mr. Trump, although obviously he's drawing all the public attention. But yes, we have a crisis situation. We need to take a good look at what our priorities should be in this situation.
Whether we use the word crisis, maybe we should then use the word challenge. Our challenge is, how do we move from 6.5% growth rate to 8.5%? Are you therefore saying that our preoccupation shouldn't be with what Donald Trump does or does not do with tariffs? Our preoccupation is to get our own act together here to ensure that our manufacturing becomes competitive enough, that our growth rates are sustainable at an 8.5%, which may provide more jobs, which may perhaps make us far more competitive in an increasingly uncertain global economy.
Well, let me comment on on these areas. One, is very clear that what President Trump has done is upended the existing, if you like, rule-based trading system. There's no way of disagreeing with that. He's done it, okay? Now, obviously, he's done it because he thinks this is going to be good for the US. Most respectable economists around the world don't. In fact, they think what he's done will actually not make America great again. It'll actually fragment America's capacity. Unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't look like that because, you know, inflation seems to be under control. Growth in the US also doesn't seem to be that much affected. But most people say that the full effects of the tariff have not yet come in. So it is going to take about 3 or 4 months before the US decides whether what Trump is doing is good for them. I personally think it's not. But I think we have to look at it in the following way. There's no doubt that what the US is doing is acting like a bully. Now, they're a big boy, the biggest one in the block, so they can't afford it. But what should we do? The normal argument would be that when somebody acts like a bully, everybody else says, look, we're not going to accept that. Unfortunately, everybody is not doing this. All the big boys, EU, UK, Japan, you name it, they have all effectively kowtowed to the US position. And this leaves us in a situation where, how do we react? I don't think that we should be necessarily provoking conflicts. We should be doing exactly what we are doing, which is trying to negotiate with the US how good a deal can we get. And when you say how good a deal, it's quite absurd to be having high tariffs, even 25%, when the US wants much lower tariffs and faces much lower tariffs for themselves. Our problem is, at the moment, 25 could become 50. So hopefully our negotiators are trying to get as good a deal as possible with the US. That's the only thing to do, and wish them luck. But I think we need to do more than that. I think our trade strategy, we need to address the question. A lot of people are saying that the old idea of being open is wrong, that you should raise protectionist barriers. The Chinese have always done it, the Americans are doing it, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's wrong. I think we should be linking up with a non-US part of the world and saying, look, let's integrate and open up with each other. So in that sense, I think the UK FTA is a very good example. I think we should conclude an FTA with EU as quickly as possible. And I think we should also look eastward. Now, I can understand that there's a political difficulty in doing RCEP because our industry opposed, I'm told, I don't know, but I'm told, that industry was very opposed to any free trade agreement which had China in it because they feel China is difficult to compete with. But we could join the Comprehensive Progressive Trade Partnership, the CPTPP, which includes Japan, which includes Korea, which includes Australia, which includes other countries. Now, this would be a very major signal. Those who say that India is wedded to closed markets, if you want to give a signal that we are not, in my view, we should apply to join the CPTPP.
So we diversify our trade.
Hang on, CPTPP is not just about tariffs. Far too much of our intellectual thinking in the country is based on the assumption that open trade means lowering tariffs. but it also means harmonizing behind the border standards, which traditionally we have been very reluctant to do. Now, frankly, in the way the world is evolving, I think we should face the fact if other people are agreeing, if other people are doing an alignment of behind the border standards, then India should be willing to do it. And of course, you negotiate, you determine the time period, but that would give a clear signal that, look, the rest of the world wants an open system. The US doesn't. We would welcome the US joining when it's ready, but we don't just sit around building little walls around ourselves. And that is a big challenge for us to accept.
Montek Singh Ahluwalia calling for a more open economy, not a protectionist one. That's one of the opportunities, perhaps, that the Trump tariff war presents.